Guys, long time no see. It's Allie, and I am so excited to be back and to be filming a new true crime video for you. Um, if you see me sweating profusely, just ignore it. It's a zillion degrees up here where I am filming this video, but my kids are downstairs sleeping, so this is the only place that I can film. So just ignore it. I'm doing my best. So I just want to jump right into this case. It's one that I have been researching for a while now. Honestly, I've been researching this case for a couple months. And that is every time I felt that I was done researching this case, I would go down another rabbit hole and I just couldn't finish it up. And honestly, I feel like there is even more information out there that I could probably bring to you, but I just have to kind of close it up and present the information that I have right now. But let's get into it. Today's case is Jennifer Kesse. Jennifer was born on May 20th, 1981 in Neptune, New Jersey to parents Drew and Joyce Kesse. Jennifer also has a brother named Logan. And Jennifer was described as highly intelligent, super fun. She was adventurous. She always wore a bright smile on her face, and she had a bright future ahead of her. Jennifer was also described as highly responsible. Her parents said that she was intelligent and she was book smart, but she was also very street smart. Jennifer graduated from Gaither High School in 1999, and while she was in high school, she was in the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and she was in the Spanish Honor Society. And then in 2003, she graduated from the University of Central Florida. And Jennifer graduated from that university with honors. She got a degree in finance. When Jennifer graduated from the university, she got a job working as a financial manager at Central Florida Investments Timeshare Company in Ocoee, Florida. And this company was owned by billionaire David Siegel. Now, something to know about Jennifer is that she knew exactly what she wanted in life, and she was working very, very hard to achieve her goals. She had recently received a promotion at work, and she had just bought her first home, a condo, in Orlando. This condominium was in the upscale Mosaic at Millennial condominium complex on Americana Boulevard. This condominium was considered safe. It was gated and fenced, and it had 24-hour security, and she felt very safe there. She was in a long-distance relationship with her boyfriend, Rob Allen, and he lived in Fort Lauderdale, which is 3 hours away from Orlando, and they had been dating for about a year. Jennifer and Rob had met at the Tiki Bar, which was a popular meeting place in downtown Orlando in the nightclub district, and they spent most weekends together despite the distance. So let's get into what happened to Jennifer. So on January 22nd, 2006, Jennifer and Rob returned from a vacation in St. Croix in the Virgin Islands. Rob returned back to Fort Lauderdale shortly after, and Jennifer returned back to Orlando. When Jennifer got back home from her vacation, she was seen leaving work at approximately 6 p.m. on the next night, January 23rd, 2006. When she was leaving, she called her parents and she was telling them all about the vacation and that she had just gotten back the day before, and that was the last time that the family heard from Jennifer. So on that evening of January 23rd, 2006, at around 10 p.m., Jennifer spoke to her boyfriend Rob on the phone. And from what we know, the phone call wasn't great. It did not go well, and Rob told authorities that they had a disagreement. Rob admitted that the conversation was emotional and said that Jennifer believed that the distance was taking a toll on the relationship. And this conversation at 10 p.m. was the last conversation that Rob had with Jennifer. So as far as we know, Rob is the last person to have spoken to Jennifer before her disappearance. So that night, after the conversation with Rob, Jennifer turned her phone off and took the battery out of her phone. And it's unknown why she did this. I think maybe, and this is just pure speculation, but maybe because it was an emotional conversation, she just wanted to turn the phone off, take the battery out, just in case he tried to call back. She didn't want to deal with it anymore, and so she turned the phone off, took the battery out, and went to sleep. The day of Jennifer's disappearance was January 24th, 2006. The way that we're going to talk about this case today is we're going to go in a timeline. So I'm going to tell you the time of day, and then I'm going to tell you what happened. I think that's the easiest way to get all of the information out there because there's so much information. So the day of the disappearance, January 24th, 2006, between 8 and 9 a.m., Jennifer hadn't sent Rob any text messages, which she always did in the morning before going to work. So this was unusual, and Rob tried to call Jennifer, and it went straight to voicemail because her phone was turned off and the battery was out. Rob thought that this was odd, but he wasn't worried because, like I said, they had had an emotional conversation the night before. He thought maybe she just wasn't ready to talk to him. Also, he chalked it up to a meeting that Jennifer had mentioned previously. So there was an emotional conversation. She had a meeting that he knew about. He wasn't super worried that she didn't answer her phone. At 11 a.m., Jennifer had a meeting planned, and when she failed to show up to that meeting or to alert anybody about the meeting, her employer noticed, and they called her parents. Because, like I said, Jennifer knew what she wanted in life. She was very driven, and when she didn't show up to her meeting, this was highly unusual. Jennifer just didn't do that. So her employer called her parents. So her parents, like her employer, knew that something was wrong. This was unusual. Something was going on with Jennifer. So on their way to Jennifer's apartment, they called the condominium manager and asked if they could check her home with a spare key. The manager went to her apartment and reported back that everything looked fine, everything looked normal, and that her car was gone. So now we're at between 3 and 5 p.m. on the day of the 24th, the day of Jennifer's disappearance. Jennifer's parents and brother, Logan, arrived at her apartment, and they find evidence that she had been home that morning. They found the bathroom vanity covered with her makeup, which was usual. It wasn't like a mess. Her makeup was on the counter. Her curling iron was on the counter. The shower was wet, and also a wet towel was found on the floor. So it looked like Jennifer had gotten up that morning and started getting ready for work. And Jennifer's mom said that Jennifer never showered the night before. She always showered in the morning to get ready for work. It was just her routine. Jennifer's mom knew that, so knowing that the shower was wet indicated to her that Jennifer had been there that morning. Jennifer's contacts were not in her contacts case, and her glasses were left on the counter, further indicating that she had gotten ready for work. Jennifer's cell phone, purse, and keys were all missing. They were not in the apartment. And on her bathroom sink, Jennifer's parents found a bottle of pepper spray that she would always keep near her keys and take with her when she left the house. Remember, we said that she was very street smart. But that day she did not take it with her, which was highly unusual. At this point, Jennifer's parents know that something's wrong, so they call the police. And we hear this so many times in missing persons cases, but the police did not take it seriously. They said that she must have gone out the previous night. They found out that her and her boyfriend had had an emotional conversation, so maybe she ran out. They just kept saying that she left of her own volition and that she would show up soon. They said that she was an adult. She was free to come and go as she pleased. Nothing was wrong. She wasn't missing. She had a fight with her boyfriend and she left. This upset the family tremendously because they knew that Jennifer would not do this. They knew even if this conversation with Rob had affected her that much that she had to leave, they knew that she would call them and let them know where she was and that she was safe and okay. Jennifer was obsessed with safety. Her parents had instilled in her and her brother Logan from a very young age that you are always aware of your surroundings and to keep your family informed of your whereabouts, which is really great advice, something that we should all do. And Jennifer's parents were very, very adamant about this, and Jennifer followed their advice. She was always telling them where she was. She would call them if she was walking alone at night. And all of this was because before they had had children, Jennifer's parents had been held up at gunpoint. And so safety was just of the utmost concern to the Kesse family. Fast forward a few hours, Jennifer is still missing, and the police finally agree to consider her a missing person. So police said that cell phone towers indicated that Jennifer had not been home the previous night. Her family came back at the police and held firm that there is no way that Jennifer would have left without telling somebody where she was going and that she was okay. And later on, police admitted that they had misinterpreted the information from the cell phone towers and that Jennifer was home the night before her disappearance and that she had just turned the phone off and taken the battery out. And just a little tidbit of information to throw in there is that she had her brother Logan, his friend Travis's phone was at her house and powered off at exactly the same time that Jennifer's phone turned off. And it said that she had Travis's phone at her house because he and Rob had stayed in her condo while she was gone on her vacation with Rob to St. Croix. Jennifer's family, her boyfriend Rob, and her closest friends decided to set up a command center inside of Jennifer's home. And this was something that they were doing. They thought they were doing the right thing. In hindsight, it was probably not the best thing to do because they were getting rid of any evidence that might be there. And they were contaminating a possible crime scene. Those at the command center distributed posters with Jennifer's picture and information on them, asking for any information on Jennifer's disappearance. Police were surveilling the streets near Jennifer's condominium, searching for her car, which was a black Chevrolet Malibu. A couple told the police that they had seen a car matching the description of Jennifer's car come swerving out of the parking lot of Jennifer's condominium complex at around 7:45 a.m. the morning Jennifer went missing. And it appeared to the couple that someone was fighting over control of the car, and they couldn't say with certainty which way the car was going once it turned onto Americana Boulevard. Fast forward a couple of days to January 26, 2006. At 8:10 a.m., authorities found Jennifer's car. Someone that had seen a picture of Jennifer's car on the news came forward with a tip, and it was found in the parking lot of Huntington on the Green apartment complex, and it was abandoned. And this apartment complex was near the intersection of Americana Boulevard and Texas Avenue. And that was about a mile east of Jennifer's residence. Jennifer's car was parked between a white Dodge pickup truck and a Jeep Cherokee, and this apartment complex was well known to the police as a place that criminals would often ditch stolen vehicles and was known for drug activity. So at this point, police summoned Rob Allen, which is Jennifer's boyfriend, and they brought him to the parking lot of Huntington on the Green to be present when they opened the trunk of Jennifer's car. Jennifer's father, Drew, later said in an interview that he believed that the police wanted to see Rob's reaction when they opened the trunk. Just in case Jennifer was inside of the trunk, they wanted to see how he would react to them finding her body. But when they opened the trunk, nothing was in there. Jennifer was not in the trunk. Authorities said that after an examination of the car, it appeared that there had not been a struggle inside the car and that everything seemed normal. Remember that, because in a few minutes we're going to talk about contradictory evidence that there was a struggle. But at this point, the police are saying there was no struggle. Everything's fine. They found Jennifer's cell phone charger, a pair of sandals, and one pair of shoes that were inside the vehicle. They also found a DVD player in the back seat, so it didn't appear as though there were a robbery, a car theft, or a carjacking. However, Jennifer's cell phone, purse, and car keys were never found. Jennifer's boyfriend Rob noted that it appeared that the driver's seat had been moved back farther than how Jennifer would keep it, and he said that Jennifer wouldn't have been able to drive the car with the seat that far back. Another important fact to note about the car is that the gas gauge was not on empty, so it appeared that whoever drove the car did not drive it very far. Authorities hauled Jennifer's car away on a flatbed tow truck for further examination. Crime scene technicians found no fingerprints in the car, not even on the steering wheel. They also took samples from the carpets in the trunk and sent those to a forensic lab, but the samples came back as inconclusive. So it seemed that there was no physical evidence to work with. And it seems obvious to me that the car had been wiped down to get rid of any fingerprints or any evidence. It's unusual that they didn't find even a single fingerprint on the steering wheel. So it seems like it was wiped down. And also the fact that they didn't find any of Jennifer's fingerprints in the car, that's highly suspicious. Her fingerprints should have been all over the car, and not a single print was found. So something interesting that I saw on a Facebook post in the Help Find Missing Jennifer Kesse group was a post about the dirt or the mud that was found on Jennifer's car. This person mentioned that there was a service road not too far away from the apartment complex where Jennifer's car was found, and that this road was a dirt road and it was really secluded. So they were inferring that perhaps that is where the crime took place. And so I'm curious, I didn't see anything about this, but I wonder if the mud was ever tested against the mud or the dirt on that service road. I would assume that that would be something that somebody could do, but I don't know. So if you know something about that, leave me a comment below. I find that really interesting, and I think that that would maybe bring a lot of information into this case. So before the car was taken to the lab, Orange County Sheriff's Office took a bloodhound named Bo to Jennifer's car. Bo appeared to follow Jennifer's scent from the car about a mile down the road towards Jennifer's apartment complex. Bo skipped the apartment complex's entrance and led investigators to a stretch of fence that separated the public sidewalk from the complex's private grounds. Once Bo entered the complex grounds, he followed the scent from the fence to Jennifer's parking spot. Something worth sharing about the parking spot is that when Logan arrived at the apartment that day, when Jennifer went missing, he said that there was a white truck parked next to Jennifer's parking spot. He said that he tried to knock on the door to ask them if they had seen anything. However, the two men in the van completely ignored him. So when Logan got there, there was a truck parked next to Jennifer's spot with two men in the car, and when he tried to talk to them, they just completely ignored him, which is weird. Authorities searched storage closets in the apartment complex as well as the nearby woods. Crime scene technicians searched trash cans and photographed a gem-style duffel bag at the Huntington-on-the-Green apartment complex, along with several pieces of discarded furniture, but they did not find anything useful. When authorities checked the security footage of the Huntington-on-the-Green's parking lot near where Jennifer's car had been found, they saw something that caught their attention. At approximately 12 p.m. on the day that Jennifer disappeared, the camera caught a person pulling Jennifer's car into the parking lot. The driver appeared to be a man. He backed out to straighten the car, then sat there for about 30 seconds. After this, he got out of the car and walked away. 20 seconds later, the man was seen walking by a gate at the apartment complex, wearing a white shirt, light pants, and dark shoes. It appeared to be clothing that would be worn by someone who is a painter or a maintenance worker. The camera captured images every 2 to 3 seconds as it was recording. It wasn't streaming footage. So investigators could only see the suspect on one side of the gate, then on the opposite side. Authorities returned to search the densely wooded area near the Huntington-on-the-Greens, and they meticulously searched the woods for evidence. They were desperately trying to find out what happened to Jennifer, and they did find a shoe at one point. However, Jennifer's dad said that it was not hers. They were also using boats to search nearby canals, but they were unable to find anything. On Saturday, February 4th, volunteers gathered at a mall near Jennifer's condo to continue the search and to distribute flyers. And most of them did not even know Jennifer. That's how far this case went originally. People from all over were trying to help find Jennifer. So this is the same day that investigators released 2 still images of the man walking from Jennifer's car by the gate at Huntington-on-the-Greens. And they were hoping that somebody would recognize him. By mid-February, the FBI had joined the investigation. On February 14th, FBI investigators and Florida Department of Law Enforcement spent most of the day at the Huntington-on-the-Green apartment complex. Investigators asked the FBI to confirm the height and characteristics of the man seen in the surveillance video. OPD came up with a height between 5'3" and 5'5", and the FBI has said that it could be anywhere from 5'3" to 5'11". At the time of Jennifer's disappearance, there were a lot of renovations going on at her apartment complex. Jennifer had told her parents that the construction workers made her feel very uncomfortable. They would stare, they would catcall and whistle, and she would always try to be on the phone with someone when she was walking in or out of her apartment and past the workers. There was a visitor's log for the apartment, but it was incomplete, so it was of no use to investigators. It's also important to note that the apartment complex was leaving the gates open for the construction workers, so they wouldn't have had to swipe anything or have any keys to go through security. Jennifer thought that this was a really safe place to live. It was supposed to have 24-hour surveillance. It was supposed to have, closed gates. And none of that was going on because of all of the construction. And because these security gates were left wide open, anybody could have come into the apartment complex just off of the street. Anybody could have. And the family and investigators later found out that there were absolutely zero, none, no, nada, zilch, no security cameras in Jennifer's apartment complex, which is something that they advertised, and it's just so infuriating. It was supposed to be this safe place for Jennifer to live, and none of the security measures were being put into place. And it's also important to note that all of these construction workers left the apartment complex shortly after Jennifer's disappearance. They weren't working there anymore. So you would think that the investigators would try to get a hold of these construction workers, right? It was known that Jennifer was nervous around them, but when questioned about this, investigators said that they never questioned many of them because of a language barrier, because a lot of the construction workers were Hispanic. So because there was a language barrier, they were never questioned. But why didn't they use an interpreter? I don't know. So Jennifer's case finally made national headlines, and people from all over the country were calling in tips. However, a lot of these tips were not helpful or useful, and so police were wasting valuable time and resources looking into tips that were going nowhere. And they looked into every single tip that was called in. In April 2006, David Siegel, who was Jennifer's employer, he owned the company that Jennifer worked at, put up a $250,000 reward for Jennifer's safe return. Before that, there was previously a $150,000 reward that was donated anonymously. But back to David's reward, the $250,000, he put a deadline on that reward of May 24th, 2006. And that day came and went with no new leads. After pleas from Jennifer's family, investigators eventually released the video of the footage of the man walking away from Jennifer's car at the Huntington on the Greens. And they had hoped that the footage would bring forward information about the man's identity. But unfortunately, it never did. On the second anniversary of Jennifer's disappearance, Jennifer's family organized an event called Beacon of Hope for the Missing. It featured 32 groups ranging from law enforcement agencies to the families of the missing. That year, Jennifer's case was featured on CBS 48 Hours for the first time. On Christmas 2008, Drew Kessie met with convicted killer David Byron Russ. He claimed to have information on Jennifer's disappearance. Russ saw Jennifer's photo while in jail on a deck of playing cards that were handed out to prisoners. Drew met with Russ at the Seminole County Jail. Russ killed 58-year-old Madeline Lineman, and he pleaded guilty, saying that he was on a cocaine binge. And he also said that he was a cold-blooded killer and he would have killed again. Russ wrote a handwritten note to Drew saying that he had information about Jennifer that he needed to tell Drew. After meeting with Russ, Drew passed on the information to the Orlando Police Department. Spokesperson Barbara Jones said that investigators had no plans to meet with Russ and that the information had been obtained and looked into several months before, and they refused to comment any further. And it is unclear, even to this day, I believe, what information Russ gave to Drew. In 2009, Orlando detective Joel Wright took a further look into the case. He interviewed a woman who hadn't been interviewed by 2006 investigators. She had been a housekeeper at Jennifer's apartment complex, and she needed an interpreter for the interview as she spoke Spanish. Wright showed her the security footage and asked if she recognized the person. She responded that it looks like Chino. She said his walk, appearance, and clothes, also his hairstyle, looked like Chino. but she wasn't 100% sure that it was him. Wright hadn't heard the name Chino before or seen it in any of his files, so he started digging into this person. Chino had done work on Jennifer's condo a week before her disappearance. Detective Wright put Chino's name into a leads tracking system, and he got a hit. Also, a crime line tip surfaced that had been received the first week of the investigation, but it didn't appear that police had followed up on it. The tip was anonymous, and it said that Chino might be involved in Jennifer's disappearance. Detective Wright then tried to find Chino. He was found in a Florida prison. He was convicted of a statutory rape of a teenage girl in 2008. Wright interviewed Chino about Jennifer. Chino admitted that he had done work in Jennifer's condo before her disappearance, and he said that Jennifer was present during the work and that she had let him into her apartment, but that she left and told him to lock the door on his way out. Jennifer's dad actually remembered this encounter and said that Jennifer actually stood in the doorway of her condo and talked to him on the phone while these workers were in her apartment. And so he knew that Chino was lying. Wright then showed Chino pictures of the unidentified suspect in the surveillance footage and asked if it was him, to which Chino replied no. Detective Wright asked Chino if there was any reason why someone would say that it was him, and he replied, nope, not really. Chino was 5'9". He was several inches taller than the suspect's height, and he was also cooperative with Detective Wright. He took and passed a polygraph test. When Wright interviewed Jennifer's building manager asking about issues between Jennifer and Chino, the apartment manager said that there had never been any issues that he knew of. After looking into Chino, Detective Wright re-interviewed one of Jennifer's co-workers, and he basically said that everything checked out normally there, and he didn't really make any headway in the case. And eventually, in 2010, he was rotated off of Jennifer's case. Fast forward 8 years. In 2018, Jennifer's family filed a lawsuit against the Orlando Police Department to get Jennifer's case files. The new police chief, Orlando Rowland, gave his investigators a 6-month deadline to work the case. When that investigation went nowhere, Chief Rowland handed over the files to the Kesse family. The files contained more than 16,000 pages of documents and 67 hours of video and audio. Under this agreement, the Orlando PD would no longer lead the investigation. At this point, the Kesses hired private investigator Michael Toretta, and they handed him over the massive case files. After reviewing the case file at least 3 different times, Toretta was dumbfounded by what investigators did and did not do, and who they did and did not interview. The first thing that Toretta did was interview people that lived at the apartment complex at the same time that Jennifer did and when she disappeared. And he found from these interviews that lots and lots of different women that lived in the apartment complex felt exactly the same way that Jennifer did regarding the construction workers. They were very nervous around them and felt uneasy. One woman known as Tammy told CBS 48 Hours that she had caught one of the workers pleasuring himself in the corner of her patio, and that he took off in a white van, but police never found it. Another woman named Ashley said that she became good friends with Chino, but they never talked about Jennifer. About 9 months after Jennifer's disappearance, Chino suddenly moved out of the apartment complex in the middle of the night. That's when Ashley suspected that he might be involved. And this is when she called Crime Line to give a statement, but nobody ever followed up on it. 48 Hours found Chino at his last known address, and CBS correspondent Peter Van Zandt asked Chino about Jennifer. Chino maintained innocence but refused to answer where he was the morning of her disappearance. He denied being the man in the security footage and didn't know who it was. Michael Toretta told Van Zandt his theory of what happened to Jennifer on the morning of her disappearance. He said that some workers lived in the apartment across from Jennifer's at the time of her disappearance. He says, "What I'm thinking is Jennifer comes out, she locks the door, of course she has her back to the apartment behind her, and she was then abducted by those individuals across the way." He also said that she probably didn't see it coming and that the individuals dragged her into the other apartment where they likely attacked and killed her. Toretta attempted to find these individuals, but there was never a list of anyone who stayed in the apartment. Toretta found a witness that had seen an individual dumping a 6 to 8 foot piece of carpet into Lake Fisher around the time of Jennifer's disappearance. And the lake is only about a mile away from Jennifer's condo. And it's important to note that the men that were in the apartment across from Jennifer's the day that she disappeared were laying carpet. A dive team searched Lake Fisher for the rug but found nothing. So now we're going to get into some important players in this case. So we're going to jump around a little bit time-wise, but I think it's important to kind of note all of these different people and what was going on in their lives during the time of Jennifer's disappearance and shortly after. So in 2008, Jennifer's employer, David Siegel, lost a sexual harassment lawsuit in Orlando federal court that had been dragging on for more than 4 years. Dawn Myers was fired from Siegel's company, Westgate Resorts, after 14 years of service. She alleged that Siegel offered her $1 million to have a threesome with him and his wife, Jacqueline. When Dawn turned down the offer, she claimed that Siegel fired her. She further claimed that Siegel had repeatedly groped and sexually harassed her in the 1990s and 2000s while she dated one of his sons. Siegel denied Dawn's allegations in court, and the judge awarded Dawn $5.4 million, and both sides said that they would appeal, but the outcome is unclear. In December 2009, the user ID Catch Me Killer posted YouTube videos claiming that he had murdered Jennifer Kesse and more than a dozen other people, including Tara Grunstead. Tara was a 30-year-old woman who went missing in October 2005 from Ocala, Georgia. And at one time, investigators thought that the two cases might be related. However, Ryan Duke was arrested for Tara's murder in 2017, and he was later convicted. The YouTuber was later identified as Andrew Haley, and he was charged with tampering with evidence and providing false statements connecting with 2 YouTube videos where he claimed he was a serial killer. Haley maintained that the videos were a hoax, and Jennifer's father is actually the person that led investigators to these videos. In 2016, the state of Florida legally declared Jennifer dead. In October 2020, CBS re-aired Jennifer's 48 Hours episode with updated information, and in November 2020, Fox News obtained evidence photos from Orlando PD that suggested a violent struggle may have taken place on the hood of Jennifer's car. So if you remember earlier, we said that the police said that there was no struggle in the car. However, now, fast forward 14 years, and there had been a struggle on the car. Drew Kessie told Fox News that it looked like someone was thrown down on the top of the hood, arms spread out, and then dragged back, almost like off the hood, to the point where you can almost see fingers scribbling down the hood, end quote. Mike Tourette said that the photos look suspicious and show what appears to be a hand mark going across the hood. The Kessie family hopes that all of this will bring in new tips and new leads, and hopefully spark fresh interest in the case. Jennifer's mom said that Jennifer must have been chloroformed or tased. She said that they were a law and order family, always watching crime shows and talking about safety, and that Jennifer had told her that if she were ever carjacked, she would crash the car because she would know that she had her seatbelt on and that she would have the airbag. A lady in Chattanooga swears that she saw a disheveled Jennifer come into her jewelry store in 2017. In early 2017, a jewelry store worker in Deshard, Tennessee, reported to the authorities that in the late winter of either 2006 or 2007, a woman had entered the store held by the wrists by a well-groomed black man with dreadlocks and wearing an impeccable high-end clothing. She was described as being in her 20s, approximately 5 foot 7 inches, with blonde hair and an old tan, which was noticeable in the Tennessee winter. The woman appeared to be there against her will, and the store worker and her colleagues felt immediately that the woman was being abused and was possibly the victim of human trafficking. The woman had a hollow expression, and her hair appeared to not have been washed in some time. She never spoke and did not respond or make eye contact when the store worker asked her out of the man's earshot whether she was okay. The encounter ended when the store worker shook the woman's hand and the woman cried out, upon which the store worker noticed that the woman's hand was bruised and had been broken. The man and the woman left in a small, dark-colored car that was possibly being driven by a third person. The store worker was unaware of Jennifer Kesse until she saw a news report while visiting Florida in early 2017. After viewing more photos of Jennifer, she became 100% certain that the woman in the store that day was Jennifer. I saw a rumor, I think I saw it on Reddit or maybe in one of the Facebook groups that I'm in, but I thought that it was interesting and I would put it here and maybe somebody can substantiate this rumor for me. But in December 2008, Jennifer's mailbox key and keychain was found by a couple from nearby Windermere, and it said that it was found on Jennifer Road. So if this is true and you know that, please leave me a comment and let me know, because I find this very interesting if this couple found her keychain on Jennifer Road. Another important fact that I wanted to add in is that Rob said that Jennifer would talk badly about the workers in front of them, and he told her to be careful because he was worried that they might get upset and hurt her. Just something that I wanted to add in, that he knew that she was scared too, and she was known to kind of say that she was scared and that they were worrying her in front of them. So I just want to make clear that Rob was cleared very early on. His cell phone was at his home at the time Jennifer went missing. It was also at his place of employment the next day, and he agreed to take a polygraph test, which he passed. So Rob was ruled out as a suspect very, very early on. Matthew Sullivan, which is Jen's ex-boyfriend, was also cleared of any involvement, and it was said that after he found out the news that Jennifer had gone missing, he was inconsolable and drank himself into oblivion for 2 weeks. The last person that I want to talk about is a man named Johnny Campos. I found some information about him on a website called blinkoncrime.com. It's a really good website. I would highly suggest checking it out. But I wanted to just give this information really fast before we wrap up this video. Johnny Campos was known by the family, by the Kesse family. It is said that Jen's father, Drew, said that he knew the name Johnny Campos. He said that Johnny had asked Jennifer out repeatedly, and that Jen had asked for her dad's advice on what to do because she didn't want to date him. And Drew said that he basically told her to go out to lunch with the guy and to let him down easy at the lunch, let him know that she wasn't interested. And apparently that's what Jennifer did. After Jennifer's disappearance, Johnny introduced himself to Joyce, Jen's mother, at one of their sponsored events the family held. And he told Joyce that before Jennifer had disappeared, the office had held a secret Santa and that he had drawn Jen's name. And he gave Joyce the ornament that he had gotten for Jen for the secret Santa and told her that he thought the family should have it. So he was kind of inserting himself into her family's life even after she had disappeared. So it's said that Campos at work was really infatuated with Jen. There are a lot of different instances here. I can read some of them to you. But basically there's a man named Adam, and he said that he worked with Campos and Jen, and that Campos was always talking about Jen in a way that seemed really possessive. He said that one time Campos told him that Jen was a jerk for dating that Brit a-hole, and other fill-in-the-blank derogatory insults is what this says. And Adam said that he was uncomfortable, and he reminded Campos that Campos was a married man, and that he didn't want anything to do with this conversation. He didn't want to be a part of it at all, and that he just needed his job and he wanted to do his job. But Campos just always kept reeling him into these conversations about Jen. He also said that on the morning of the 23rd, around 8 a.m., January 23rd, 2006, Adam overheard Campos confront Jen upon her return to his cubicle. And they didn't know that he heard this going on. So January 23rd, 2006 is the day that Jennifer got back from vacation. She went into work, remember? And so basically, in a quick summary, Campos confronted Jen about where she was and who she was with on her time off of work. And Jen responded that she had had a fantastic time and that she loved it and hated to leave. And Campos was audibly and visually perturbed. And it just seemed really odd because Campos wasn't her boyfriend, obviously. And why was he so upset and just like obsessed with where Jennifer was? And so Adam just noticed all of these different things. So he said on Tuesday, January 24th, when Campos showed up to work around noon, he appeared overtly nervous and he was pacing around. Adam thought that he was acting strangely, but he said that it didn't escalate to being like scary behavior until a few hours later when he learned through the grapevine that Jennifer was missing. And Adam said that Campos was a supervisor at that time, so he didn't need to have a time card or any proof of what hours he was working when he was at work. And so Adam said that the next day, on January 25th, seemed to be even stranger of a day. He said that Campos asked him to drive to the new Westgate office at Lake Eleanor. And Adam thought that it was weird since it was not either man's responsibility, but he agreed to do it because Campos was his supervisor. And he said that Campos didn't have his car, which is why he needed Adam to drive him to the next place. So little things are going off in his head. Why don't you have your car? So during the drive, Campos told Adam that wherever Jen was, she was likely eaten up by alligators already. And Adam said, please don't say that. That's terrible. And Campos repeated it. So there's more here. I got all of this from blinkoncrime.com. He was just acting really strangely. I'm looking here, I'm sorry. I don't think that he was ever named a suspect or even a person of interest. No, I don't think he was. Not that I saw. But it is somebody interesting and somebody that was interested in Jennifer and was gone from work at the time when she disappeared and didn't have his car the next day. So something to look into. So in ending this case, Jennifer is still missing. Nobody knows where she is. She just disappeared into thin air, basically. Her family is still searching for her. They're still hopeful that they will find her alive. And I've seen lots of different theories as to what happened to her. That she was abducted, that maybe she was sold into human trafficking, possibly murdered. Hopefully that's not the case. But if you have any information on the disappearance of Jennifer Kesse, I will leave links below so that you can get in contact with the proper authorities. And I'm just going to end this with a couple of quotes from Jennifer's family. Because they're who is important, and hopefully they can get the justice that they want for Jennifer, and hopefully they can find Jennifer. Hopefully she's alive out there somewhere. So I'm just going to end this with a couple of quotes. We have great hope that this year we're going to know, maybe not exactly what happened to Jennifer, but where we need to go and what we need to do. Jennifer's dad, Drew, said over the phone with ABC7. If you know where Jennifer is and the information is real, name your price. Go ahead. We'll get it. We'll find it somewhere, said Drew. If you know anything about the disappearance of Jennifer Kesse, her father asked that you privately message him on his social media pages or email them through their GoFundMe. They also say you can call someone you trust like a lawyer to get the information to them to contain your anonymity. So please, if you have any information on Jennifer, please contact them. You can remain anonymous. But that is our case for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you learned something, and I hope that somebody out there knows something about Jennifer. I would love it if you subscribed and hit the like button, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.